Crocheting a perfectly flat circle shouldn't be hard. So today I'll be sharing with you 2 ways on how to crochet the perfect circle, plus a few tips and tricks, which includes how to work up the magic ring and how to crochet in the round seamlessly. All you'll need is your crochet hook, a ball of yarn, and the most important thing is a stitch marker. The first method is called the crochet in the round method. This method is worked up in individual rounds using the slip stitch to close up at the end of the round. Now first, you'll wrap the yarn around 3 fingers like so, and you'll wrap the second round over and across the bottom yarn. Next, you'll insert your hook under the bottom yarn and over the top back yarn, and you'll pull that loop through. Now you'll release the loop from your fingers and you'll hold on to the bottom of the loop with your dominant hand. Return the loop back to the other hand. Yarn over and pull through a loop to secure. Now you should have a secure loop and a newly created magic ring. And from here you can remove the tail end from the circle like so. Now we can proceed to working on our stitches along the loop. I will be working a half double crochet stitch for demonstration purposes, and to start off, I'll pull the first loop as tall as a half double crochet should be. I'll yarn over, insert my hook through the magic ring, I'll drop a loop, I'll yarn over and pull through all loops. This will be my first half double crochet stitch. Now I'll place my stitch marker through that stitch that I just made, marking this as my first stitch. Now I'll continue working on my half double crochet stitch through the magic ring. I'll be working a total of 8 half double crochet stitches, but go ahead and work any number of stitches that your pattern calls for. Once you've completed all your stitches, you'll take the end of the yarn tail, you'll pull it tightly to close up the loop. This magic circle is adjustable and you can close it or you can leave a gap, whichever you prefer. To close up this round, we'll be working a slip stitch through the first stitch where we placed our stitch marker earlier. We'll remove the stitch marker and we'll insert a hook through that first stitch through both loops. Yarn over, drop a loop, and work that slip stitch. This slip stitch method is the most commonly used way, but if you prefer the invisible join, then I've placed a link up here for you to go check out. For the next round, I will not be making any chains. I will increase the height of my loop, and into the same last stitch that I worked in, I'll work my half double crochet stitch. Now, don't forget to return the stitch marker back into that first stitch. And from here, you'll be able to see that slip stitch join that we just made, and not to be confused with that last stitch. Now, for this round, we'll be working increases into each stitch. So I've just worked my first half double crochet. I'll be working my second half double crochet into that first stitch. I'll continue to work 2 half double crochet stitches into each stitch, and this is what we'll be repeating in round 2. Once you've reached your last stitch, make sure to differentiate the last stitch here and the slip stitch here, which will not be working into. So this is my last stitch. I'll be working 2 half double crochet stitches. I'll be skipping that slip stitch that we made on the previous round. We'll remove the stitch marker and I'll place my hook into that first stitch and work a slip stitch. Now for the next round, I'll pull my loop high and I'll work my half double crochet stitch into the same stitch. I'll return the stitch marker. For this round, we'll be working 1 single and 1 increase. So for the next stitch, you'll work an increase of 2 stitches, and then you'll just be repeating 1 and 2. So I'll be working 1 stitch followed by 2 stitches. You'll be repeating this single stitch and increase stitch into every stitch in the round. Your last stitch should always be an increase stitch. So here I'll be working my 2 half double crochet stitches. I'll skip that slip stitch. I'll remove the stitch marker and work a slip stitch into that first stitch to close up this round. If you feel that your circle is beginning to pucker or warp a little bit, just pull the stitches slightly and you should be able to get a nice flat circle. Now for the next round, you'll work that half double crochet into that first stitch. You'll return the stitch marker. And just like how we worked on the previous row, we'll be adding 1 additional single stitch. So here I've worked 1 single and another single into that second stitch. And to my third stitch, I'll be working that increase. So it will be 1, 1, and 2. Now you'll go ahead and work 1 single stitch, 1 single stitch, followed by the increase stitch. You'll repeat this pattern of 1, 1 increase into each stitch all the way in the round. Your last stitch should be an increase stitch. So here I'm working my last increase stitch. You'll skip that slip stitch joint and work your slip stitch through that first stitch. Now as you can see, there is a pattern increase on every round. You'll just be adding 1 additional single stitch from the previous round that you did, followed by an increase stitch after. And you'll repeat this cycle into every stitch in the round. And once you've completed all your round, go ahead and chain 1 to secure and you can bind off. And this is how you work the crochet in the round method. Now let me show you method 2, which is called the spiral method. For this method, you will definitely need to use a stitch marker. Unlike the first method, if you can identify the first stitch, then you can go without the stitch marker. But for this method, you would definitely need to use the stitch marker. Now let me show you another way on how I work the magic ring. I'll work 2 chains. I'll yarn over, insert my hook into that first chain. I'll draw up a loop, I'll yarn over and pull through a loop. This is considered my first half double crochet stitch. Now I'll continue to work my half double crochet stitches into the first chain while carefully inserting my hook and not pulling the loop to prevent the chain from stretching too much. Once you've completed all your stitches, as you can see, this is my first stitch. So instead of working a slip stitch into that first stitch like how we did in method 1, I'll be working a half double crochet stitch instead. And because I'm starting round 2, I'll be working an increase of 2 half double crochet stitches into that first stitch. Now I'll place my stitch marker into that first stitch that we just made, and from here I'll continue to work 2 half double crochet stitches into every stitch in the round. Once I've reached my last stitch just before that stitch marker, you'll be able to see a spiral beginning to form. I'll remove my stitch marker, and into that first stitch, I'll start round 3. Just like how we worked our increase on the previous method, you'll work 1 stitch and 2 stitches into the second stitch. So you'll work 1 stitch followed by an increase stitch. We'll do this into each stitch all the way and around until we're back at the stitch marker. I've just worked my last stitch and we'll just be repeating the same pattern as how we did on every increase round. On this round, I'll be working 2 single stitches followed by an increased stitch. Don't forget to place the stitch marker back into the first stitch. I've already worked my first half double crochet stitch, so here is my 2 single stitches followed by an increased stitch into the third stitch. 1 1 increase. So here I'll work 1 half double crochet, 1 half double crochet, followed by 2 half double crochets. And now that you know this pattern, you'll just be repeating the same steps, the same pattern in the round. Your last stitch should be an increased stitch. And if this is your last round and you would like to close up this round, instead of working on top of that first stitch, you'll go ahead and work a slip stitch. And this slip stitch will close up the round and you'll chain 1 to secure your stitch and bind off. And if your circle's a little bit puckered or warped, don't be afraid to tug it slightly to loosen up the stitches. This method is a great choice if you prefer an invisible seam. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and if it was, do hit that like button and subscribe for more tutorials like this one. I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.